Former Speaker of the House, Fox News contributor Newt Gingrich. The most amazing thing here is this is supposed to be a special counsel on Trump-Russia collusion. The big indictment today, well, announced and leaked Friday, but announced today. Paul Manafort. Mr. Speaker, 31 pages, no Trump-Russia collusion, zero. But all these other issues I am talking about, the Fusion GPS dossier, the Uranium One deal, we have a boatload of evidence. What's your take?
Well, first of all, the United States Congress should open an investigation to protect the rights of Americans. You have an out-of-control prosecutor who was supposed to be looking into Russian collusion, who, think about this, Paul Manafort voluntarily showed up today, walked in, turned himself over, is not a threat to the public, was not a threat to flee. Yet this summer, the Justice Department broke into his house at 5 o'clock in the morning,
guns blazing,
caught he and his wife in their pajamas.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you have to say to yourself, this is the most grotesque abuse. And then you look at, as you pointed out earlier, a 29-year-old who is now pled guilty to what? To having said the wrong thing to the FBI, having factually been wrong. He clearly lied. Would you like to go back and look at the Clinton staff, John Podesta? Notice that even the Susan Collins tonight, Senator Collins, said he's going to have to come back and testify, implying, I think, they did not tell the truth. You go back and look at all the people who've been lying, and we finally get down to a 29-year-old guy. Not that they convicted him of doing anything wrong in the meeting with the Russians, but he gave the FBI the wrong date. Now, wow. I think this thing is going to grow into a bigger and bigger and bigger scandal, and at the center of it is a corrupt Justice Department whose professional staff was totally in the tank for Hillary Clinton and has been grotesquely abusing its power.
You know, here's the thing that I can't get. Can you think of any reason on God's green earth that Barack Obama, Hillary, putting aside all the evidence that we now know they had, that Vladimir Putin had agents in America, bribing, extorting, money laundering, racketeering, they knew in 2009. Holder knew it, Mueller had to know it, Rosenstein knew it, the two guys in particular in this case. Why would Hillary or Obama, just on the surface of it, why would you ever give a hostile regime and a bad actor, Vladimir Putin in Russia, 20% of our uranium? And that's what he set out for, and we knew he set out and he was committing crimes to get there. How is that possible?
Well, I mean, first of all, if the numbers are right, and I think this is another thing Congress should insist on bringing in the information and compelling it to be delivered. If the numbers are right, there were various sources associated with this who gave $145 million to the Clinton Foundation through a Canadian foundation which could avoid the agreement they'd made with Obama about reporting their donations in the United States. Now, as bad as the Bill Clinton $500,000 speech was for a Russian bank, this is 290 times as much money. So you have to say to yourself, oh gosh, why would Bill and Hillary go through with a deal that might involve $145 million? Well, I'm going to be old-fashioned here, Sean. I know it's a shock. Follow the money. They wanted the money. This is about corruption. Hillary, from the time she made money illegally on cattle futures for her entire career, has thought she could get away with this stuff. It's only as it begins to unravel now that we begin to realize that this is truly horrifying. You have two attorneys general of the United States. You have the director of the FBI, Mr. Mueller. You have a local attorney who becomes the deputy who then the attorney general who then brings in Mueller. You have a level of corruption that's unimaginable. And let me say, quoting Alan Guelzo at Gettysburg College, who's a student of this, he believes this is the most corrupt presidency in American history. We've only touched the beginning of it,
about the Obama
and it's going to keep unfolding.
But you never got to my fundamental question.
The Obama administration is the most corrupt.
But is there any reason you can think of that you'd ever give 20% of the foundational material, American assets, to Putin and Russia? What did America get? What did Obama get?
They didn't care. They didn't. Well, I remember the Clintons got $145 million. They didn't care. Remember, Obama is the president who said to the then Russian President Medvedev, it was caught on camera, let us get through the election and then we can be a lot more generous to you. Right, I mean, why would you think that these guys who are Looney Tune liberals who have no idea of the real world would have worried about giving Putin uranium? They were out of touch with reality. They're still out of touch with reality.
I got to ask you about
Trump. That's just a fact.
I got to ask you about the Fusion GPS story. I got to ask you about how corrupt the media is, and also you won't believe what Hillary Clinton said about our coverage, about this show, of her scandals. Newt weighs in on that straight ahead.
I would have much preferred to have come to the dinner tonight from a slightly closer residence. But it does strike me that in the last few days, at least Fox News seems to think that's where I live in the White House. Because they spend a disproportionate amount of their time talking about impeaching me. So look, if they want to make a trade, I'd be more than willing.
No, we're just pointing out potential crimes and corruption that you have had, and we believe in equal justice under the law. And what you did was inexplicable, Hillary. That was her over the weekend, once again attacking Fox News and obviously us, because we dare to tell the truth about the scandal surrounding her. We want equal justice under the law. We continue more. Former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich. All right, the very thing they have been accusing President Trump and his campaign of, no evidence after a year, we now know they're guilty of. We now know that Clinton's campaign, the DNC, and now we learned over the weekend Barack Obama, about $10 million, over $10 million of money spent to a law firm, they all use the same law firm, to funnel money to this Christopher Steele that gets phony information from Russia, this salacious dossier using Russian sources to influence Americans in the last election. When is Mueller going to investigate that? Because we know the money exchanged hands. We know it was propaganda and misinformation.
Well, look, I think this is the real test of Mueller. Early on, I said I thought he had a record for being honorable. I frankly withdrew that after looking at who he was hiring, how he was operating, what he was doing. It's going to be fascinating to see this. My newsletter tomorrow at Gingrich Productions.
I've been telling people, when you surround yourself with only Obama, Clinton donors, no Trump donors, and you look at the Manafort thing, and it's so far removed from his original mission, which was to look at Trump-Russia collusion, I've been telling people he wants to use Manafort, squeeze him in the hopes he wants to take down Trump. Tell me I'm crazy.
Sure. No, I don't. I don't disagree with you. My point is, now we have a chance for Mueller to prove he really is nonpartisan. He really is above all that.
Don't believe it.
And it's easy. First he goes, I didn't say I believed it either. I said he has a chance to prove it.
Yes, sir.
He goes after Tony Podesta, then he goes after Tony's brother John, then he goes down the list of the Clinton people. I mean, if he's prepared to be genuinely open and to really go after the Clinton case, and here's what I found, as I was thinking about this during the commercial break, the most sobering thing about this entire unbelievable scandal is if she had won, none of this would be coming out. I mean, think about it. They would have covered it up. They would have continued to corrupt the FBI. They would have continued to corrupt the Justice Department. We would have learned nothing about how horrible this is, and they would have continued, I think, to sell out America's interests. It is an astonishing gap. And people who wonder about whether or not it was important that President Trump won, you think about the difference between what we're learning now and what would have been covered up by Hillary Clinton.
Bribery, extortion, money laundering, racketeering, and Mueller and Eric Holder and the FBI informant with evidence. In 2009, they didn't stop the Uranium One deal, and they knew Putin was at the bottom of it. Let me ask you this. Talk about the fairness of a grand jury process. You're going to indict a ham sandwich. This is in an area where Hillary Clinton, D.C., a good friend of mine pointed out, Ken Starr couldn't get an indictment against the Clintons or a conviction there ever. And yet this is the area that is now being used in this campaign. It seems like there's an injustice when it's so overwhelmingly left-wing liberal Democrat.
Oh, sure. Look, this goes all the way back to John Connolly in 1979 being indicted by a grand jury that was 100% Democrats and eventually winning the jury trial. But it's very uphill and very difficult. And I think a good prosecutor, remember that all the grand jury is saying is that there is reasonable grounds to look at this. The test for an actual trial is the opposite. The test for the actual
Probable
trial
cause.
is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt.
Huge difference.
So I don't think you should automatically respond just to that. But the point I was trying to make a minute ago, I want to come back to, because this is a direct challenge to Robert Mueller. If he is sincerely interested in justice, he has to go after the $145 million in Canada. He has to go after Bill Clinton's $500,000. He's got to go after all the different permutations that we've now learned about, including the stuff that when he was FBI director was covered up. Now, I'm with you in that I have a hunch he'll fail this test. But I think it's a fascinating moment in American history, particularly when you had Tony Podesta resign, because he now knows he's so guilty, he doesn't want to take his entire firm down with him.
And you forgot Trump. I have another challenge. Look at the funding of Clinton and now Obama and the DNC for phony Russian propaganda that was repeated by everybody to influence an American election. We know they did that. That's a fact at this point.
Right. It turns out that Trump's definition of fake news, I'm not sure how you say it in Russian, but you now have absolute proof there was fake news, cheerfully carried up by several of the networks in the New York Times, and it was false. In fact, I'll be fascinated to see if any major elite news media goes back and looks at how much they were duped.